Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, a big man back on campus for Grant McCasland. Rick Pitino must be butthurt, and another Red Raider could be hernia hurt. We're into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to have you along for the ride again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan coming to you with good news, friends, as we kick off the episode. Chris, we're waiting for dominoes to fall with the Texas Tech men's basketball program as it relates to Grant McCasland assembling the remainder of his staff and, of course, addressing the roster. You and I have talked about a little bit over the last couple of days, maybe what we anticipate as far as how many or how few returners you could have from a season ago, and there's a wide variety of opinions on what that should be. I know all across the Red Raider fan base, but one guy that we know is going to be back in the mix is Robert Jennings, who entered the transfer portal, had some options, did a little shopping, possibly did a little looking around, but chose to remain as a Red Raider. So I don't know if that's the biggest domino to fall, but is a pretty big one, literally. Young guy, Chris, and even though we didn't see his all as a basketball player, obviously as a freshman, saw some good things. And I got to tell you, just the opportunity for Texas Tech to continue to develop with a young guy with potential these days is pretty exciting to me. I was glad to hear this news.
Yeah, because I think Casey, the reports were, look, he's gonna go visit Virginia this coming weekend, and then he's gonna kind of decide between the two options, staying at Tech or Virginia, which are the two teams that played in the 2019 title game. And he had other options, I think. Now, is this a case where some of these schools backed off? Virginia's like, hey, man, we're full. We don't have a spot anymore. We're going a different direction. Who knows? But and maybe it was just Robert Jennings saying, or his people saying, hey, man, we feel most comfortable here. We're out. We're going to remove our name from the portal. I think the point is the same in that you keep a very young, high character, culture type guy, and I think that these are the Norris Odiases, the Zach Smiths, the Keenan Evanses, the Justin Gray potential piece right here. And what I mean by that is, look. He averaged, so I want to make sure here, 2.7 points, 1.9 rebounds. He played just under 9 minutes a game. People around the country are going to look at that and go, I mean, seriously? But I think it's more. There's more to it than that for Texas Tech. I think it gives Coach McCasland somebody that you can grow old with, and that's somebody that I think is a good vibe guy. He's like a positive guy. He's a high character guy. He's not a knucklehead at all. I think he's going to play hard for you. And here's the thing. To sum it up, he's very, very young. I mean, he was put into a situation this year at times. He just wasn't ready for some of what he had to deal with, but he handled it okay. I think that some situations were better than others as far as the games and the minutes and all that. But this is a big picture thought process here. This is a young man in Robert Jennings. It's only going to get better because he's got a Big 12 body. He just needs to catch up with the age of the rest of the league and all those things and kind of be able to kind of ease into this a bit, which is, again, sometimes easier said than done because they needed him, this past year. The key is going to be, though, for Robert Jennings, the key is going to be is what's next to him. Do you have Do you have the Daniel Bacho next to him? Do you have Daniel Bacho and somebody else? Do you have two somebody else's next to him? I just don't know if Robert Jennings is completely ready to be a starter and 25 minutes a night in this league. If you hope to be, I mean, I don't know if we're quite there yet, so I want to hope that people don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but I just think this is a guy that, boy, I think in a couple of years he's going to be a monster in this league. And I was absolutely pleased to see this. He would have been a guy that I would have had that I definitely would have loved to have seen back. And I think you get good news there.
I've got kind of a two-part question as it relates to what you were just talking about right there. Who's next to him? Where does he factor in? And I would say if he's got to be your 25-minute a night guy and expecting him to get this in the Big 12, you're going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble. I'm not going to limit the ceiling for Robert Jennings, but we also know kind of where he was on his train of progression. So I hope he's not the frontline guy or is not the only guy. But so I guess the two-part question, Chris, involving Daniel Bacho, does this impact, do you think, either Texas Tech's pursuit of or Daniel Bacho's view of Texas Tech with Robert Jennings returning to the mix? And the second part of that is, can you give me some perspective of yours on the feeling of who is Texas Tech pursuing? Is everyone that has entered the portal still being pursued by Texas Tech? Because when I say, like, does this change Tech's pursuit of Daniel Bacho, I don't even really know what I'm talking about. Is there a pursuit? I know that's shocking news to everyone that I might be off in space somewhere, but does that make sense? I'm kind of wondering on both ends.
Absolutely, it makes sense. It's a very valid question. I think the assumption has been made that those that aren't in the portal are happy and locked in here and all that. I don't necessarily believe that to be true. I just think that some of this is yet to play out. And I think, Jennings, his process started much earlier. He got in the portal, I think, a couple of days after this team got back from Kansas City. And I think a lot of people were like, man, you didn't wait any longer. And he wasn't like, irresponsible about it. I just think he entered his name in the portal, trying to keep his options open. He didn't know how this was going to play out. Point being, though, his process started and again, I've told you, I don't believe there was any NIL deal there. So he was kind of allowed to do that without any ramifications, where some of these other guys that were tied to NIL deals, it kind of states in a lot of these around the country, you get in the portal, that stuff stops, and he wasn't beholden to that. So I think some of these guys that are on the roster now that aren't in the portal, I'd like to think that they're all back. I just think you have to be careful in talking absolutes because of the way this stuff works. I think, you're still trying to ultimately determine, the Tysons, the Pops, the Lamar Washingtons, and Kyron Lindsay's. You help me out if I forget anybody. But there's that core group that, again, we haven't heard a lot out of. And I think people have just skipped to the end and be like, okay, they're here, they're good. I just don't know if I necessarily buy that yet. Yeah. I think if you maybe get, and this may cause people to roll their eyes a bit, but I think this is the way this stuff works. But I'm not going to be surprised if you get some social media announcements out of some of these kids. Hey, I'm staying, or I'm entering the portal. It could be that way too. But because I haven't seen really anything publicly from a lot of these folks, and I do know that they're, it's become a thing where you kind of recommit to the school, because I just, I think you'd be naive if you don't think that the Tysons and the Pop Isaacs and some of these folks have heard from other schools too. I mean, even though they're quote unquote not in the portal. Now, as far as Bacho goes, let's go down the list and help me out with who's in the portal, Cowan, if I forget somebody. But KJ Allen, I don't think you are continuing to pursue him. Yeah, I think Robert Jennings, you very much were. Okay, you've gotten that done. I think Elijah Fisher, I think that's a maybe. I think you would like to have him back. I think, although that one's pretty quiet, and I'm not as positive about that situation that he could be an option that stays here. But I think he's still in Lubbock, so we'll see. I think Bacho, you absolutely are still trying to keep him here. I think he's highly sought after. I think that, I've heard, look, there's a lot of Ole Miss talk. I've heard San Diego State talk. I've heard,
don't you dare, Butch. Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Don't you dare, Daniel.
And there's connections there. It makes sense. He's in the portal.
What connection?
Yeah, well, yeah, Al Pinkins and Chris Beard.
Don't do it, Bacho. We've had so much good together, Bacho. Remember Bacho Fever at the USA? Remember the mutton chop days?
Bacho, man. Yes, that's
on,
right.
Bacho.
I want to be he's absolutely somebody that I would love to see them hold on to. I think that when he's right, and again, that's what you mentioned the last time we talked about him, that's kind of the key, is when he's right, and that wasn't near enough. But I think part of it is the situation last year and all season was unstable. I think that's very fair to say. Health-wise, drama-wise, all those things. I don't know if he handled that very well at all, and probably wasn't in a good place. And I think a lot of us weren't in a good place as we watch this team kind of do their thing. But he is somebody that I absolutely would hope that they can retain him and play, because he makes Jennings better. I think you could play those guys together. I still think you need some more 4 and 5 man help. But
right.
Who have I like? Here are the 2 wild cards. We have not mentioned these guys' names.
But first, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On. Baseball is back, and that means homers, double plays, fat men in polyester pants, and everything you love about a day at the ballpark. And that means it's the perfect time to get in right now with FanDuel as a new customer, because new customers can step up to the plate immediately with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on and sign up to place your first bet and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if the bet don't bank. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 today when you join FanDuel. You can either download their safe and easy-to-use app or visit them online at FanDuel.com/locked-in to sign up and get started today with FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball.
Here are the 2 wild cards. We have not mentioned these guys' names. Where do Kerwin Walton and Demorion Williams fit? Where's that? They're not in the portal. I'm not certain that they would be guys that Coach McCaslin would just beat down the door and say, "Gotta have you, fellas. We would desperately love to keep you here." I don't know that. There's not a lot of production there, nor is there a lot of youth there. Okay, these are going to be upperclassmen here, and expected. And I think you can, again, I hate operating this way, but I'm just trying to keep it real with you. You can upgrade significantly out there in the portal right now over those 2 guys. So
yes, I agree totally.
No indictment on them as people. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But I think because I've seen you're connected to the Nevada freshman that's really good. There's an Oregon State kid that I think is really good. There is I'm trying, and it's like a new name pops up. Some of the Oklahoma players. So anyway,
no, I think I mean, you and I are good people, but they don't want us either. So there's a lot of good people out there they don't want.
Some would question your statement there. Some would, some
and they would be banned from the channel if they did.
Someone say, fact check that.
No, that's been one of the more interesting things to observe, is that Kerwin Walton and guys like that and Demorion Williams are not there. I'd probably have a little more leeway for Williams, just because I don't guess his NIL deal has been so highly scrutinized or heavily scrutinized. You can't not produce and make a lot of money. I just don't think it's going to work out for very long. You do it for a little while, and he did. So kudos to you for gaming the system, I guess. But you can't stick around. And if there was one that I wanted to sever ties with, it would be Kerwin, Mother Lovin' Walton, because I just think that name has become a curse word at United Supermarkets Arena among Texas Tech faithful. Better or worse, it ain't our fault. You know, you had a chance. You're the one on the floor, and you did get a check that cashed. So I don't think there's any victims here. No great tragedy. Go be a great person in your real life, wherever that is. I'm no longer interested in that relationship on a Texas Tech basketball level. But I will leave it to Grant McCaslin to decide. Fisher, Bacho, want them both back. If I can only have one, give me Daniel Bacho because I want size. And you're absolutely right, Chris. If Bacho and Jennings both put their name back on the Texas Tech dotted line, you're still not finished. You still need size. You're still not finished addressing the front court. So it would kind of only be a start, I guess, but be a pretty good start. Maybe if you could get some news with Daniel Bacho. Stay away from Oxford, Mississippi. Bacho, are you familiar with humidity? Are you familiar with humidity? Come on. Keep it in West Texas. Before we are leaving,
go ahead. And real quick, here's two names that we haven't heard a lot out of either, because I think people kind of out of sight, out of mind. You also don't know exactly where it stands with your two signees. You know, you've got two kids signed to national letters of intent, Jason Jackson and then Drew Steffi. I'm going to assume Drew Steffi is still coming here, but Jason Jackson, on the other hand, that's kind of more of he's a Florida guy. He's kind of tied to Al Pinkins. So keep that in mind, too, as you start trying to figure out scholarships and how many pieces you have to fill and all that. I just am not – in fact, I would guess right now that I don't believe Jason Jackson would end up coming to Texas Tech. So I just throw that out there as we kind of do a –
high school guys.
Well, yeah, but it
all about those guys.
it does open up a spot, and you don't have to use it on that could be another portal option.
Well, what was what in the world is going on with the speculation on Drew Steffi and McCaslin? And I mean, there was stuff running wild online over the weekend, or maybe for the last week, about a thanks but no thanks message. Was that just idle Texas Tech hands making for the Devil's Internet Workshop? Or was there anything to that, Chris? I know you saw some of that.
Yeah, no doubt. I can't speak to the validity of because there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things on Red Raider Sports that I've seen reported about this stuff, and I think there's some things on, like, as relates to coaching staff and players and all these things. I just don't think we all know the full grasp of things. I think it was well documented that Drew and his dad were in Lubbock last week, and I have no reason to believe until told otherwise that he won't be here in late May, early June. Now, I think again, and I think here's the gray area. I think if you want to buy into some of that, in that there is a chance that he would not be here, I think that's okay to do. And the reason I say that is because there's just not many things that are for sure in this sport this time of year. Okay. And would he have other options? Sure. Would Coach McCaslin have other options? Sure. Is there a long-term relationship between, I think, Grant and Matt, Drew's dad? Yes. But that doesn't mean that everybody just holds hands and walks down the yellow brick road and off into the, sunset together. Right. No,
you saw how it went for them. They had to battle flying monkeys and pass out in an opium field first.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some truth to kind of wonder about that situation. Yeah. But again, I wouldn't get pointed into one direction or the other and feel very comfortable about that's the thing. This is what I'm trying to say to sum that conversation up. I've kind of told you what I think Jason Jackson's situation. I'm just reading tea leaves and just based on where he's from and who he was tied to from a recruiting standpoint. I also, though, if you're sitting there going, Lamar Washington, he's back here, we're good there, or Pop Isaacs, we're good there, or Kyra Lindsey, I think you're crazy if you just go to bed at night and go, we're straight. I mean, I've got these six guys. I don't think that is the case yet anyway. So so on the same situation where there may be some uncertainty with the signee like Drew Steffi, I would say that the same uncertainty there with some of your current players too. So sorry for being
we're back
long-winded.
We're back to the couple in bed meme where the woman's saying, "I bet he's thinking about other women," and he's over here thinking about, is Kyron Lindsey really staying at Texas? We're back there again. Yes. And I appreciate the sick devotion of Texas Tech fans far and wide. Before we leave hoops, because we're going to wrap up with Red Raider football coming up next, one of the more exciting aspects of Tech football is what's going down in the defensive backfield. But unfortunately, a medical procedure we learned from head coach Joey McGuire going to be in store for one of those guys. And I want to get to that coming up next before we're done. But before we leave basketball, Chris, hard left, switching gears as it's now to scheduling and wondering why St. John's don't want me, man. That was a Will Smith. It was pretty weak, but nonetheless, my Will Smith looking for his dad impression. St. John's, Madison Square Garden, take it or leave it on St. John's, but an opportunity to play a basketball game at Madison Square Garden always gets your attention, Chris. But now what was set to be a scheduled game between the Red Raiders and the Red Storm is off, we are learning. Can you add any context to this or tell me what I'm missing?
Well, I can tell you that Ben Vereen played Will Smith's dad in that episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I've never been so angry at a fictional character in my entire life.
1,000%.
Than Ben Vereen in that particular episode. He just swoops in and swoops in and kind of plays dad for a little bit, then away he goes. And it was just
what
like
a jerk, Ben.
Exactly. You know, I mean,
Will probably turned into an Antifa kid or something if that show had continued on.
So the St. John's.
No, I'm good on the rest of that. I just wanted that context, Chris. We can wrap it up. That's all. I'm sorry.
St. John's, they apparently, nixed this home and home. I think when you start seeing John Rothstein and the New York Post and all those things, they're the ones that are breaking this news. It's very clear that you had a home and home agreement to where you were supposed to go play at Madison Square Garden against St. John's this December. I think December the 10th, whatever, 15th, whatever it was. And this was going to replace your SEC game in the Big 12 SEC Challenge, because what the way Texas Tech has operated is you've had like 5, meaty games, if you will, and then you load it up with the rest of it that are home games, they're guarantee type games. But you've in the last several years you've had the Big East Big 12 Challenge, which has given you a home or away game, and then you've had the Big 12 SEC. So you've either had one at home or one on the road or whatever. And then you've gone to play at one of these MTEs, these multi-team events, which was Hawaii last year. So the St. John's game was supposed to fill in for the SEC game on your schedule, and you were supposed to go play them in mid-December. They were going to come back here the following year. Both of these programs have new coaches. Rick Pitino, for whatever reason, I guess, or St. John's, they just say this doesn't make sense for us. Maybe they postpone it. I don't know, but it puts Texas Tech in a bind now that you don't have like a mid-major or Power 5 type other program. And a lot of that is already done with a lot of programs. There's probably some options that you could go play. Now, you were already willing to go play a road game, but now, so you could still factor in a neutral site game somewhere, whether it be in New York or Dallas or Fort Worth or San Antonio or Phoenix. Yeah, absolutely. So you need to probably do a little more work on your schedule. And then the other thing that they're going to go do this Thanksgiving is they're going to go play for the Battle for Atlantis. I looked this up earlier just to make sure, but you've got in that event, so that's Thanksgiving week, this next week, Arkansas, Villanova, Michigan, Memphis, North Carolina, Stanford. They're all there. Some big-time names that were kind of somewhat down last year, but I don't think that would be expected to stay that way. So,
right.
And then we haven't talked about this at all, but you're going to play at Butler at Hinkle Fieldhouse, I think on November the 30th this coming fall. That's your Big East game. So Anyway, I was upset to see. I don't miss going to New York in mid-December, though. A lot of people love that trip. I'm not a fan of the NYC. I've been there way too many times. It makes me feel claustrophobic. I don't mind telling you. And Texas Tech has played in the Garden a bunch, against Louisville, against Duke, against I'm trying to think of who else, against Tennessee a few years ago. So anyway, got some work to do on your non-conference schedule.
Yeah, and Rick Pitino's got some work to do and not catching feelings. So butthurt he didn't get this job. He was begging and groveling. And this is what it's all traced back to. That's my exclusive reporting. I can report from the scene. Rick Pitino's butthurt level at an all-time high. Okay, we're leaving hoops there by the side of the road for now. Switching gears as we wrap it up with Red Raider football and Rayshad Williams. We'll get to the defensive backfield and what's coming up for Mr. Williams next on Locked On Texas Tech. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Before we are out of here today, wanted to spend some time talking Tech football, Chris, because I said to you actually just a couple of days ago that I wanted to spend some time on one of these episodes getting into the Red Raider defensive backfield, because while you had some exciting announcements as far as guys that were hanging around for another year on the defensive side of the football up front with guys like Bradford or Hutchings, was just as excited to get that kind of announcement from Rayshad Williams and Malik Dunlap in your defensive secondary. Really feel like even with the loss of Reggie Pearson, but guys like Tyler Owens being there, that makes it one of the more intriguing aspects of your team at large. But unfortunately, that's not exactly what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about Rayshad Williams because we learned from Tech head coach Joey McGuire this week that he is set soon to see a doctor regarding potentially a procedure to address what Coach McGuire called a sports hernia. So orthopedist in Vail, Colorado, if you got to go see one, seems like a good enough spot to go see one, I guess, is going to be there in the future for Rayshad Williams. Coach McGuire really, I think, sounded pretty bold as far as him being ready for fall camp. So we'll keep that optimism in our pocket for now. But where are we with this injury, Chris, that seems to be, I guess, kind of in a nagging category? Has been addressed before, kind of thought it was okay, maybe settled down, but I guess now has returned.
Yeah, it's something I think kind of bothered him leading up to the bowl game, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think thought it was going to be okay, and it better to find out and kind of deal with it now than this be in August the 12th. So better April the 12th and all those things. If it does require surgery, it's not, I don't think, major in nature. Easy for me to say when it's so it's always minor surgery when it's somebody else, right? But he's a guy that you know what he can do. Okay, so even if you have to shut him down and even he eases back into fall camp, I think. But this is the problem here is that, and I know Coach McGuire talked a lot about Mo Horn, who is. Mm-hmm. I think a younger player that is somebody that was kind of injured most of last year and missed some time. I think it was a hamstring issue. But this speaks to how big of a kind of a sneaky loss it was when you lost Kobe Minor to the portal. We would be talking about Kobe Minor here right now, because I would love to have been talking about Kobe Minor and also Mo Horn. Yeah. And so that's why. So here are the names that. So now Mo Horn, opposite of Malik Dunlap, is a potential starter if they were to play a game right now. We're months and months away from a game, but everybody just moves up. This is where you get into the situation when you have one of these older guys that goes down, and we've talked about this. This defense is really old and inexperienced, but behind that experienced older group, you really skip a lot of steps and you get to a lot of youth and inexperience. And so Hence the reason I'm going to tell you that Chapman Lewis, the Brendan Jordans, the Jordan Sanfords, these are all kids that just got here.
Chapman Lewis, that sounds like somebody that wants to give me a reverse mortgage. That's a defensive back. Okay, I just want to mark this down.
Or a law firm. Yeah, that's right. If you drink too much on a Friday night and you get pulled over, call Chapman Lewis. Yeah, 555-1234.
NIL deal possibly, Chapman. Keep it in mind.
That's right. And he's been spoken well of quite a bit too. Just I know we're making fun, but very unique name. So, but the point being though that I think the Kobe Minor, and he left. I think he's playing for Indiana now. He wanted to start, and it just killed me because when I saw that, I'm like, most people probably he hadn't played a ton. But he had a chance to be pretty good, and I hate it that he left. I know Joey and those guys did not want him to leave at all, but this is why now we're into that conversation now that you've got one of your starting corners kind of dinged up a bit. So, but I do think that Mo Horn is somebody that is got a chance too. I just want more options there, plural, as opposed to just like, well, let's roll it over to our one young guy that's got a little bit of experience. Because after that, you really go, and there will be, depending on what they find or depending on how these young kids respond, if you have an option in the late portal window, in May, I think we've kind of established now that, okay, do we look at tight end? Do we look at offensive line depth? But also I think very much needs to be added there. Do you look at corner or DB depth? So don't be surprised if they have one spot, if they're trying to decide amongst those three, because you're going to get some movement here off of your team. There's going to be some kids that have gone through spring that just they could see the writing on the wall, not happening for me. I'm on scout team still. I've been here for a year or three, and it's just I need to go somewhere else. So there'll be some of that too. So I won't be surprised if you have a spot or two. And again, I would look seriously at a potential depth option at corner. And I'm say depth option if they're good enough to start or whatever, that's fine too. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. So, but yeah, Maurice Horn's the name of the day, but I wish it was Kobe Minor's name that we were talking about.
Well, tell me if I'm wrong, though. Just sitting some of the injury issue potentially aside, I feel like this group has got some of the most potential that you got of any group on the team, because I mentioned Tyler Owens, but also C.J. Baskerville, the San Diego State transfer. Then you've got the Dunlap Williams returner. Rabbit's back in the mix, right, too, as well, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you've got guys back there that have seen a lot of football, and then you've got some guys also maybe that if they hadn't seen so much are some of the more physically gifted on the roster. Maybe Owens is kind of in that category. But, man, I'm part of the reason why defensively really excited about the year overall. Clearly, you got to talk about those guys up front, but that defensive secondary doesn't appear to be any slouch either.
No, I mean, I think your front line is salty. I mean, I think, and again, they're going about it a bit shorthanded this spring because you mentioned the Tyler Owens. He's not going through spring, and I think they've been very smart with Malik Dunlap and Rayshad Williams. And then obviously, I'm guessing that Rayshad Williams has actually been shut down for the rest of the spring based on what we've talked about here with the potential sports hernia and all that. But when healthy, you've got lots of options on the back end. And C.J. Baskerville will, I think, has been really good so far. He will replace Marquise Waters and kind of play closer to the line of scrimmage. Really? And I think a sneaky good guy too that a lot of people don't know a lot about is a guy named Joseph Plunk back there he's a coach's son. His dad is the head coach at Amarillo Tascosa. Plunk is one of the hardest working kids over there, period. I don't care what. And he's, semi undersized, but I mean, he is a coach's kid to a T. He is first in drills. He busts it every single day. And he's somebody that I think can provide some depth at a variety of different places. So, because I think he's been more of like a free safety type at this point, but Anyway, I just throw his name out there because I know he's been getting lots of reps in spring ball and all that, and probably will in the spring game coming up in about a week and a half.
Looking forward to that, seeing some of those. You do get this opportunity typically in the spring, seeing some of those that maybe you've heard of or only seen listed on a roster, but may have some opportunity here to show out and flash a little, especially given in some various spots where you've got guys who are not participating in spring camp. Okay, hoping for the best with Rayshad Williams, because clearly you got a chance to be salty and then some on the back end of that defense, and with the defense overall, once again, under Tim DeRuyter. So hopefully that comes to fruition, and you've got some good luck from a health standpoint as far as this potential procedure, because I don't think he's destined for it just yet, but potential procedure for Rayshad Williams is concerned. Chris, enjoyed the time and the insights as always, man. Appreciate it, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
Sounds good, man. Keep hope alive, people.
You got it. Make it your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Let's go. We're on the way. Within sight of that Locked On Podcast Network commemorative keychain. And I hear it's the one that comes with a bottle opener as well. So that's good for those of us who have a problem. He's Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, and we'll see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.